there are a lot of pitfalls and traps out there if you're on the carnivore diet, things that just make life a little more complicated if you fall into it, things that you need to be kind of aware of. And I'm sure you can give me some examples that I won't talk about here. Like these were just four or five that I could think of off the top of my head of things that people commonly fall into, maybe because they're just not aware or they, haven't developed good habits yet to help avoid these things. These are things that will cause you unnecessary problems. And, they do touch on some areas that people really debate on in the carnivore space. I'm going to avoid those or avoid the underlying debate just because it's not really relevant, at least for what we're talking about here. So what are things that you should be aware of on the carnivore diet when it comes to food and food related problems that will cause you grief if you're not careful? Well, the first one, we're going to talk about sausage. When I talk about sausage, I'm talking about things like not just, breakfast sausages where I think most people know breakfast sausage is loaded with sugar, with maple syrup and other things that you're not going to probably eat simply because it's a bad idea. You know that. You generally avoid it unless it's a once in a while rare treat. I'm talking about other kinds of sausage. I see in carnivore social media groups all the time people saying Polish sausage or kielbasa or whatever. Are they okay? And the answer is maybe. This is Hillshire Farm sausage, probably the most commonly sold kielbasa style sausage in the United States. Find it at almost every grocery store, and if it's not that brand, it's a brand exactly like it, selling you exactly like the same kind of sausage that Hillshire Farm is selling you. The problem with these sausages is that they are loaded with filler ingredients, whether they're binders or sweeteners or strange preservatives. So take a look at these. You're going to see corn products in these. You're going to see flavor enhancers. You're going to see other things that on the carnivore diet you want to avoid. Again, unless it's maybe a rare treat or something. So, kielbasa has that smooth, soft texture that people find just amazing. It adds a nice sort of, dimension to the meal. A lot of that's the fillers, unfortunately. There are other ones you'll see that are the smoked sausage style that have soy proteins in them as fillers. You want to avoid those. The whole point of the carnivore diet is to eliminate the plants that you consume entirely or down to a barest minimum, depending if you're fine with coffee, tea, and spices or not. Which brings me to the next one, spices. There are a few things that divide the carnivore community more than the topic of seasonings. I'm not weighing in on that here. If you're okay with spices, this is a warning for you. Spice blends and barbecue rubs are not your friend, bought online or in the grocery store. It's like a minefield. That's what those are. Most of them have things in them you want to avoid. They have binders and questionable ingredients like monosodium glutamate or MSG. A lot of like the barbecue community outside the carnivore space have reclaimed MSG because it gives a nice umami flavor to things. It can also overload your body's satiety signaling, meaning you're going to have a hard time. Your body's going to have a hard time letting you know when you're full. You may overeat because of MSG. This is not to repeat all the sort of the weird stuff in the 80s, 1980s about MSG. At the most basic level, it can harm your ability for your body to let you know when you don't need to eat anymore. It's kind of an important thing to have your body working for you on. It essentially mimics almost like metabolic damage that way. There's some other suggestion that can cause your gut flora to have problems and things like that. But other problems typically seen in rubs and spice mixes are various forms of sugar, including dextrose as well as cornstarch and similar corn products to prevent caking of the product in the bottle. Those kind of things require usually something added to it to prevent it from becoming just a solid mess. You have to then take your, a butter knife or something and chop up to make it so it'll come out of the sprinkle bottle. Plus, some spices are just inflammatory for many, many people, including things like jalapenos and other hot peppers. I may do a video on spices because there are various lists out there showing what are better for carnivores than others. At the end of the day, it really comes to what your body can handle or not. Like I can handle black pepper. I did a video where I went from eating no black pepper to tons of black pepper. That was a bad idea, but my body can generally handle black pepper, even though it's high in oxalates. But not everybody can. So you should be aware in general of spice blends at the store. Read the label. Look to see what's in there. And if you don't know, get your phone out, Google or whatever, what is, dextrose or whatever. You're going to find that a lot of those things might be sugars, or that they may give you an insulin response of some kind that you just don't want. Which brings me to the next one. Barbecue restaurants. In addition to them lying to you about brisket, which I have a video in the works on, by the way, very annoyed when I found this out, the rubs that they put on their meat are loaded with sugar. And I know this because I went to a well-known, but will remain unnamed, small chain of barbecue restaurants in my area, one that my family and I had been going to on a fairly, semi-regular basis, often enough that the people who worked there at the time kind of knew us. And I asked them, just point blank, because I was doing clean keto at the time, hey, in your barbecue rubs, is there any sugar? And they just sort of looked at me and said, literally half the weight by volume of the rub is sugar. Think about that. They're not unusual in that way either. Most places are going to be like that. Now, classic barbecue, Texas-style barbecue is the one I'm most familiar with, is going to be, on a brisket or beef ribs or whatever you're having, is going to be mostly salt, coarse black pepper, and maybe garlic. That's it. You'll see pitmasters online adding other things to really jazz it up, often just for videos or because they just taste good. If you go to classic Texas barbecue is salt and pepper, maybe garlic, maybe some onion powder. All of those things are generally on that sort of carnivore friendly-ish list if you're doing relaxed carnivore. When you go to these restaurants, they put a lot of sugar, and they probably are putting MSG in because it enhances the flavor and can, of course, if you're carnivore or keto, cause you a lot of problems. And the reason I asked that restaurant about that back when I was just doing clean keto was because I noticed if I went to barbecue places, the weight loss I was averaging every week dropped dramatically. Turned out I was knocking myself out of ketosis just because of the amount of sugar that I was taking in. So be advised about barbecue restaurants. They're not your friend when it comes to this stuff. Also, sugary sauces. I mean, I should go without saying, but barbecue sauces are usually loaded with sugar. Even though the ones at barbecue restaurants tend to be higher quality, made in the store, you can tell because they're runnier, they're not as thick. The thickness from a lot of barbecue sauces that you see at the store is either caused by corn syrup or by binding agents and thickeners, like emulsifiers meant to actually mimic corn syrup in the thickness it provides to sauces. So be wary of that when you're at the store. The next one's one you're not going to want to hear. That's breakfast restaurants. Some of them put pancake batter in their scrambled eggs and in their omelets to make them fluffier. I have this on good authority that the International House of Pancakes, IHOP, is guilty of this. They're probably not the only one. That's in addition to those sugar-loaded breakfast meats, which, by the way, are sugarier there than they are in other places than if you just bought them at the store or made them yourself. So, see ham on a breakfast menu, you're going to want to go to their website and look up the nutrition information to see if it's something you can have. Same with the breakfast sausages. You might be surprised at how many grams of sugar are in some of these things. And that's disregarding the fact that every one of these places cooks everything in seed oils. Almost none of them cook anything in butter. You actually have to go to a fairly nice restaurant to find anything with butter. I'll give you another example of this. My wife absolutely loves a sort of a regional chain here called Jimmy's Egg. And she loves getting, Eggs Benedict or anything with hollandaise sauce. Hollandaise sauce shouldn't have more than like trace carbs from the egg yolks that are in it. There is like 4 grams of carbs per serving, which is unusual. It's because they put some sort of a sweetener in their hollandaise sauce. Hollandaise sauce is actually a perfectly carnivore or carnivore-friendly condiment, especially if you're relaxed carnivore and a tiny amount of lemon juice in the hollandaise doesn't bother you. If that does bother you, you can swap that out for vinegar. It makes it a little thicker, but it's still hollandaise sauce, and it's delicious. But these places will put sugar in it. Why? I have no idea. Hollandaise doesn't need it. But that is something you should be aware of. And the other one are places that serve chicken wings. Most fry their wings in seed oils. Some of them will do a light dusting of their chicken with cornstarch to add sort of a little extra dimension of texture and crunch to them. That's obviously something you should avoid. The only wing place that I know that doesn't do that is Buffalo Wild Wings. They fry theirs in tallow, and I had that confirmed when I spoke to a manager who works out at my gym, actually. He said, yeah, it's tallow. Okay, that's great. But the problem with Buffalo Wild Wings is this. Most of their sauces have seed oils in them. I know because I looked it up. All the sauces that I remember loving have seed oils in them, so I'm just staying away from them. And their dry rubs are often have those anti-caking agents or dextrose or amounts of sugar. Even the salt and vinegar rub does. So be wary of those. Just have the information. Make your decision if you're going to eat that stuff or not, knowing what you're getting yourself into, because it's very easy to go, well, I'll just go to the steakhouse and not have the sides, or give the side to my kid who's not doing carnivore or whatever, and just eat the big steak. And then you just feel bloated and like having, signs of inflammation, or if you're dealing with Hashimoto's or something, suddenly these things are coming back because you consume seed oils. They're in everything at most restaurants. One of the things that I like to do because I'm self-employed is that during the day, early in the morning, a lot of these nicer restaurants, it's fascinating to see the food delivery trucks that come to them. Because most of them are, the big, corporate food delivery services, 2 or 3 different companies that they all use, United and Cisco and a couple others. It really is revealing, because you're essentially eating the same food prepared with different levels of skill and authenticity, regardless if you're paying $12 at like Chili's or whatever. I don't know how much Chili's costs anymore. It's been forever since I've been there. Or if you're going to the nice mom and pop steakhouse in your town that you might spend $30, $40 per person for dinner. It's interesting how that works out. And you're going to find almost across the board seed oils, even at Buffalo Wild Wings, which carnivores love. And it could be that their most basic hot sauce doesn't, but again, it's going to still be made with jalapenos or something, which are going to be inflammatory for a lot of people. Let me know if there's other of these kinds of landmines out there for carnivores and people on keto who are trying to keep to a whole food life that people should be aware of. The barbecue spice, the barbecue rub one particularly hit home for me, and the sausage one. I've been craving sausages lately, and I finally found one that wasn't loaded with a bunch of stuff other than a few spices. So it's okay for a treat for me. But, I have a cabinet full of these spice rubs, and the only reason I still have them is because, I make barbecue for my, my mother and my brother sometimes. So they're not on the diet I'm on. I'm not going to, force my diet on them, so they can have that stuff. Still miss them though. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you thought of this, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. And share this on social media if you can. That helps as well these days, especially since YouTube really loves that. I'm Anthony Stine, and thank you for watching today.